Welcome to Forensic Friday.
Where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all. Y'all, Nat and I have been talking about how we can even speak about what's happening in LA right now. It's so sad and overwhelming. And so we landed on talking about psychological first aid and some of the ways that we can support each other and take care of ourselves in the midst of a crisis.
Yeah, I
I don't
mean,
have millions of dollars. I don't know all
no,
the things.
I know. Well, and it's hard to know like who to donate to and all that because, you just never know.
Oh, yeah.
But I think my heart hurts for them. And, I hope that, I don't know how this would look, but to be honest, I hope there's some level of funding that can go towards healing and like helping them process. I mean, it feels like half of LA burned down.
Well, I think it did. And
Yeah.
we've talked with clients, friends, family, whoever who's from that area, and it's just devastating. And I was going to tell the story to our listeners of the Waldo Canyon fire because I didn't understand wildfires really until that fire. So it was in 2012. It was kind of brewing behind a range, like a ridge in the mountain range around where my folks live.
Yeah.
And we were watching it for a while. And that's a little different than the LA fires. The LA fires were just bam, like they just
Yeah.
took off. This was sort of burning in national forest land. It wasn't really burning around structures initially. But I had this bad feeling about it for a week. And I kept telling my parents, they were kind of on pre-evacuation status. And I kept telling them, you guys really maybe should get some stuff together. You may need to evacuate. I was starting to get nervous. And
Yeah.
so one day I was up at work in Wheat Ridge. I was living in Southeast Aurora. So that is a drive.
Yeah.
And the fire was starting to get a little wild and we had a lot of wind. And I just knew. I just left the office and I called my parents and I said, you guys need to go. And
Yeah.
my parents, they're very stubborn. They do what they
Yeah.
want to do. They were getting things together though. They're not stupid, right? But I said, I think you guys are going to need to come. I'm going to go get the house ready. We had just moved into our new house in Aurora 2 weeks before. So we have nothing. I have like
Dang.
no furniture.
Right.
I think we had a couch, but we didn't have a table yet. I mean, it was just crazy.
Yeah. Right.
So anyway, they load their stuff up and all of a sudden about 3 o'clock, I think I got home at like 2, maybe it was 3 or 4 in the afternoon. I get a call from my dad and he says, we're coming. And
Mm.
it's mandatory evacuation and it is
Mm.
everywhere. Like, where Woodman and I-25 is?
Yeah.
It was from there south all the way down to like, oh my gosh. I mean, it was burning behind Garden of the Gods. It was burning all over the place
Mm.
down there. Yeah.
Mhm.
So they mandatory evacuation, this whole big section of Colorado Springs. Well, my uncle with special needs, he's older than my dad by 7 years. He
Mhm.
lives kind of in that same area. And
Mhm.
my parents had the wherewithal to pick him up. But anyway, so back to my dad says we're going. They leave. Their cell phone service is not working super well.
Okay.
And they're talking about the smoke and it's starting to get hard to see.
Right.
So my parents couldn't get a hold of each other, but they could both call me. And this is back when I had one landline and a cell phone.
Yeah.
So my dad called one, my mom called the other, and I held the phones together.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that insane? I had to hold the phones together and
Mm.
they are yelling. Okay, my mom decides to turn towards the fire because there's less traffic.
Oh gosh.
Tina, seriously, we still laugh about it. The fire burned all the way down to the road that my mom turned to.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that could have been bad. But anyway, she did miss some traffic because you had an entire valley trying to get out one way. So they shut the road down. They're getting everybody out. So
Jeez.
while they're yelling at each other through the two phones, I turn on the news and the entire Front Range where I grew up is burning. I mean, it's crazy. It's still
Yeah.
all burned up.
I remember that fire. I mean, I moved to Seattle or to Washington when all that was going on. Like, right, I think I moved right before.
Yep.
And oh, I remember it was one of the bigger ones we had seen up till then. We've had
Oh.
since, but
Well, it was, and it ended up being the biggest to that point.
yeah,
Now we've had a few more that have been bigger, but
yeah.
I will never forget Nat, my parents, when they pulled up and they reeked of smoke.
Mm.
They smelled like a campfire. I mean, it was ridiculous, and so did all
Mhm.
of their stuff. But I will never forget seeing my mom get out of the car because she, of course, was the first one to pull up. She drives faster than my dad.
Yeah.
So she pulls up the driveway and she gets out of the car, and I mean, I almost collapsed. I was just so relieved that they were safe. And then I made Eric drive down. He didn't love that, but I made him do it. So
Hmm.
he drove down and my family was together. And I remember thinking, like, okay, my people are here, but like,
Yeah.
now what?
Yeah.
And so when you're in Aurora, my parents said it was so surreal because everything was burning around them. But in Aurora, it's nothing. We didn't even have smoke.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like another world. And they talk about how helpful it was to be away from it where
Mm.
they weren't watching it burn for days and days. And they were at my house for probably the better part of a week.
Dang.
And I think they lost 300 and some houses maybe in that fire.
Okay.
And since then we've had a couple really big fires that have been close to other family and friends.
Yeah.
So when this kind of kicked up in LA, that was my first thought was that time because it really wrote something on my heart and in my
Mm-hmm.
brain about wildfires specifically, but also just kind of like your river experience, just how quickly things can change.
Yeah.
And yours was Mother Nature as well.
Yeah.
We have like no control.
No, none. Well, and it honestly reminds me too of the Westminster fire
Oh, yeah. The
that
Louisville
happened.
one?
The Louisville one, yeah, that
Mhm.
happened, and it was just ripping through people's yards and houses, like just ripping through like neighborhoods,
Oh, residential.
It
It
didn't, it
burned down
didn't,
the Target I shopped at in college.
oh yeah, it didn't start like as a forest fire. It started at a home and then just ripped through
Yeah.
so many neighborhoods in that area.
Wasn't it a cult? I heard it was a cult. It started at a cult compound.
I think I think I heard that, but I don't know if that's
I
true.
don't, allegedly, allegedly.
Allegedly. We'll do research on that. That'll be our next
Yeah,
one.
yeah. I don't actually know that for sure. Don't sue me, but that was the big rumor was that it was like a culty thing, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
The thing that's crazy about wildfires when you've actually experienced them,
Hmm.
when you hear people on the news say it's apocalyptic,
Hmm.
that is the feeling. It really feels like nowhere is safe, nothing is safe. I can't breathe, I can't
Hmm.
see, it hurts your eyes. And I think one of the things we've noticed is we've had a lot more people listening in California because people in California right now, they're probably trying to take
Yeah.
care of themselves the best way
Yeah.
they can.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things we wanted to do today is just talk a little bit about psychological first aid
Hmm.
in natural disasters and accidents
Hmm.
because it can protect our mental health and keep us
Yeah.
from getting PTSD.
Yep. I agree.
So I was telling Nat she's so jealous when I told her this, but I took a critical incident stress management
Oh yeah,
class.
I already looked it up. I'm gonna sign up for one.
What? I would take it again. Let's take it together.
Okay.
I got to do it again because I didn't keep up my certification because we're certified in 8,000 things and I can't keep them
I
all
know.
up. But I took it from an FBI chaplain.
Hmm.
So
It's
she
so
was at
cool.
9/11. I mean, all these really big events. She was a
Hmm.
chaplain, but she was like boots on the ground, helping
Hmm.
people. And she taught us so much about how to care for first responders and also people affected by these just catastrophic losses.
Yeah.
And in California, it's whole neighborhoods, whole communities, you know? And so
Hmm.
basically, psychological first aid is kind of that first step. It's the first thing that people need.
Hmm.
And what do we talk about now when it comes to needs?
Sorry, I was looking at your thing. I was looking at the training.
Oh,
Um, when we look at needs, I mean, one of the first places we start, because we do work with a different population than a lot of others, is Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
absolutely, which is safety,
Yeah, it's basic needs first.
basic needs, food, shelter, safety,
Clothing,
clothing.
that's it.
Yep. And I think that our aid communities do a really good job typically of
Yeah.
setting something up. Not always, like Katrina was a cluster, right? Like not always.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we do have a lot of resources that go into those immediate physical needs.
Mm-hmm.
Water, blankets, we donate, and we should donate all of those things. That's what they need,
Yep.
basic needs,
Yep.
right? But what happens when they're sitting on a cot in a gym and they have clothes and it doesn't smell like smoke anymore
Mm-hmm.
and they're with their people, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they're just not okay. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. What do we
Yeah.
do then?
Yeah.
So, once the basic needs are established, and that can be an ongoing effort, that's not like a one and done, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
We have to give some practical support.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are some of those things, Nat? What's like practical beyond immediate needs? What are practical ways we can support, do you think?
We'll be right back. Eye-Opening Moments podcasts are real-life stories of adversity, encounters, and perspectives. They are moments that can lift your spirits, give you some food for thought, or move you. For the introspective mind that likes to reflect, discover, and find solutions or meaning in a complex life, listen to Eye-Opening Moments podcasts.
So some of the practical support that needs to happen is, explaining concrete actions like
Hmm.
listening empathetically, offering comfort, and assisting with basic necessities. So getting individuals in there who are trained to literally do that. So therapists,
Mm.
social workers, individuals who are literally trained to help in these crises. Crises.
And connect to resources, which is a part of that,
Yes.
right? Which is like
Yes.
insurance agents. Like, who's going to
Yep.
pay for your hotel?
Right. Insurance.
Yes.
Uh,
What are the next steps? You're not going to be in a gym for 3 weeks, right?
right.
So,
Right.
what are we
Food,
doing?
all of that.
Yeah, they've got to do all of those pieces. And so,
Yep.
social workers really are exceptional at that.
They are. And we have a little bit of that training as therapists. I think you and I specifically did more of that just because of the work we've historically done and the work we do. We used to work a lot more with substance use and drug court and all that. But
Yeah.
helping people find their basic needs.
Oh, yeah. I can't tell you how many lives have been saved. People that I know were imminently suicidal who just needed food. Literally, they needed to know where a food bank was and they
Yes.
needed food,
Food and somewhere to sleep.
somewhere to sleep, more than even therapy. I mean, I think you're right. We need to bring in teams to be
Yeah.
supportive. But I actually was on the Denver Seminary CISM team for a hot second. You know me, I do a
Okay.
little bit of everything.
Yeah.
But the thing that's really funny is when you get called in, I've been called in with a couple things. People tend to process one trauma behind,
Mm-hmm.
which is really interesting. So I was one of the first responders with the New Life shooting, which in
Yeah.
retrospect I shouldn't have been because I know people in that community and it was upsetting to me too. But I
Yeah.
just wanted to do something to help, right? So I volunteered to help.
Right.
People were calling this line to get support and they wanted to talk about this past church trauma that happened more
Mm-hmm.
than the current thing that happened with the shooting. And so sometimes what happens is people have older stuff come up
Yeah.
when they're in the middle of a trauma and nobody understands that and they don't know how to
Yeah.
support that. And so,
Well, and just to even shed light on some of that,
oh yeah.
think about our nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if my nervous system gets lit up at church hurt and church trauma, and then I go through a shooting or something like that where
Yeah.
it's not the same thing, but my nervous system gets lit up again,
Yes.
that's what a lot of reasons why past traumas get lumped in.
Absolutely. It gets stored in the same part of the brain.
Yep.
So it makes sense that it gets activated. And we haven't even processed the current one enough for it to even be front of mind. Our
Right.
brains are still trying to escape that reality.
Right. Right.
Right.
It's like when you talk to an adult who experienced a lot of trauma as a kid, they might have
Mhm.
experienced like the same type of trauma over and over again, but a lot of times they will experience that, but also different traumas based on what their upbringing is.
Yeah,
And for them, it gets all clumped together because
absolutely.
it's lighting up our nervous system every single time.
Yes. That is so true. And so one of the things that's interesting when I was on that CISM team is when you roll up to a school,
Mm-hmm.
okay, after a school shooting, they don't want to talk to a therapist. They really
Mm-mm.
don't want to talk to they want to talk to each other. The problem
Mm-mm.
is people in the community don't know how to help each other. And so
Mm-mm.
we sometimes further traumatize because we sit and we talk and we talk and we talk and we doom scroll and we get into the rumor
Yeah.
mill. I remember the rumors were so hard during
Mm-hmm.
my parents' experience with the fire because I was getting text messages, their neighborhood's gone, this is done, this burned down, this, and it just was really upsetting and I was in it. And
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't as much of a social media heavy time as it even is now. And now there's
Right.
TikTok, which is even faster.
I know.
TikTok is so fast, right? And so I think what we need to do is empower ourselves and our communities to
Mm-hmm.
support each other even more than like a therapist can in those moments.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the things I
Yeah.
was going to give you guys is a few tips for how to respond to someone who is in distress.
Yes.
Okay, so if you're the in distress person, you let people help you. That's
Yeah.
like number one.
Well, we can literally use my flood experience.
Perfect. We're going to talk about the flood experience, the flood and the
Let's talk
fire.
about that.
Yeah, we've had opposite experiences, the flood and the fire.
Flood and fire.
What you need from your people, and this is something I did for you for sure. I
Mm-hmm.
did not make you talk about it.
Mm-mm.
I didn't make you talk about it at all. It about killed me.
No.
As a support person, I wanted to know every
Mm-hmm.
detail. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to know every hair on your head that was damaged or harmed in any way.
Yep.
But that wasn't what you needed. You just needed peace. You needed
Yes.
to sit and just stare if that's what was going to happen, or
Yes.
sleep or whatever.
Yes. You have, promote self-care on here. And I
Mhm.
think that's one of the big things is, if you're someone who's on the outside, right? Like I didn't know you when the fires happened, but you have been very much in my life, obviously,
Mm.
when the flood happened. And so for me, what was so helpful was that you would just check in here and there.
Yep.
And like you said, you didn't make me talk about the whole story.
Mm-mm.
And one of the things that I think can feel like you were saying earlier, like a lot of times when people talk about the experience, we can kind of it's like trauma bonding a little bit.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
It feels connecting, but it's also putting that trauma in deeper.
yes, yes. And I think so when people like when the thing has just happened and people are like, oh my gosh, tell me about it.
Mm.
What's going on in your brain? How are you feeling? Like at
Mm-mm.
the end of the day, it's like you yourself, and I'm sure you and your family can
Oh yeah.
identify this. You are trying to process what you feel yourself. So I remember when the flood happened, when the flood happened, when I was caught in a flash flood in a canyon, there was no flood that happened
It
to
was a
me.
flood. You were practically Noah. It was a
I
flood.
was, yeah, I was in a slot canyon caught in a flash flood. I should
Yes,
make that
yes.
known. So, but when that happened, I texted a couple people. You were one of them, but I
Mhm.
texted you and my friend Jessica from the ambulance because I was like, they are the two friends that I'm like most in contact with during the day via
Totally.
text.
Well, we would know immediately something was wrong.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it was Jessica's graduation weekend, and I was like
Well,
wanting to check in on her.
yeah.
So I texted the two of you, but then later that evening when we got home, Brittany had talked to her mom already because her mom was watching their 4-year-old.
Oh, right.
And so they talked to, and so I was like, well, I need to tell my family like a little bit just to let them know we're okay, just in case like, Brittany's mom calls them or something. I don't know. Your
Right.
brain's not really working.
No, uh-uh.
And here's what didn't, and I did this to my family and a couple friends, and here's what didn't help
Yep.
was my family actually responded okay because I thought they were going to be low key blown up pissed
Oh,
because
yeah.
I was pregnant. Well, I am pregnant, but I was newly pregnant at the time.
Yes.
And I thought they were going to be like, what the actual F are you doing in a slot canyon
Ugh.
hiking while you're pregnant?
Right.
So I thought they were going to blow me up. But what didn't help was, I told a couple of my close friends later that night, and there was a few different things that didn't help. One, when people just jumped in and said, how do you feel? What's going on? What's going on in your
Yeah.
brain? Doesn't help. because I don't even know. I'm still pulling
You
twigs
still
out.
don't know. Honestly, you
Right.
still don't know all of it.
I still don't know how I feel all the time, right? You said your parents showed up and they smelled like smoke, right? Like you don't, I'm pulling twigs out of my hair. Your parents smell like smoke.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it's a whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't help. But then also what also didn't help is when people were like, well, you knew that was a risk.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Or, well, I don't know if your parents heard this with fires, but I have heard people say this to individuals who experienced wildfires like this,
Yep.
is people will say, well, why didn't you evacuate sooner?
Why didn't you evacuate sooner? Well, we're living in areas we shouldn't be living or whatever. And I'm sure
Yes.
hurricane victims get this. Those poor
Did you,
people in Malibu who have a house on the water, it's going to be like,
right.
I'm so sorry your Malibu house burned down. Like,
Well, it's like when people ask you, I'm sure, because you live in the woods,
oh yeah.
did you cut all your trees down? Like,
And
yes, I'm
do
doing
you have
exactly what I
homeowners
need to do.
insurance? I'm like, I do. I actually do. I didn't think of that.
I know, but it's like, but that's what
I
I'm
know.
saying is people say sometimes the dumbest things
They do.
because they don't know how to sit in the discomfort of what
That's
you
right.
went through,
They're
right?
not trying to be awful, but we don't sit with discomfort,
No,
ambiguity,
no.
fear. We don't do any of that well. So we will either try to fix it, try to make it smaller, or try to make it somebody's fault.
Yeah,
That's what we try to do. And it's human nature, but that's not what your people need in
no.
this situation, right? We need to actively listen, which is really hard. Garrett laughs on the podcast because Nat and I are both therapists. So most of his editing is us going, mm-hmm, yeah, or saying the same thing again.
Oh my gosh.
You'll
That
say something
actually
and I'll just
drives
say the same thing.
that actually drives Preston nuts. Preston the other day, this is so funny. He
I
was
believe
like,
this already.
I know, he's so funny. He was like, you guys need to actually surprise each other because sometimes it sounds like you're trying to surprise each other, but you already know, and you can tell that you know. And I was like, we don't actually know
We
though.
don't know. We're just that empathetic.
Right. He was like, you sound like you're faking it. And I was like,
No,
we're not.
no.
If I say, oh shoot, or oh, that's crazy, like that's because I actually don't know what's going on until you
We,
just
yes. And also, if our society was good at active listening, we wouldn't have a job. So much of our training is how to just listen to someone.
hmm
Offering comfort, physical touch, if appropriate, right? Like, don't go hugging people if they don't want to be hugged, okay? Especially men, like, lay off, okay? Don't go hugging people unless
Well,
they want to be hugged.
you know me. People had to literally text me when I was coming back to work, and they were like, "Can I give you a hug when I see you?"
Okay, you know why you got those text messages? Because I told an entire staff, do not hug her. When she
Mhm.
comes back, you don't hug her. She comes to you, you don't come to her.
Mhm.
I told them
Yes.
ahead of time, and they
Yeah.
all looked at me like I was crazy. But you have to know, I mean, you are so lovely and precious, but you don't want 20 hugs when you get back to work. That's not your thing.
I don't like hugs in general.
I get it. I'm not real huggy either, man. I'm
You're
not a big
more huggy
hugger.
than me, though.
Oh yeah, no, you're black cat for sure. Even I don't want 20 hugs, especially if something upsetting has
I
happened.
know. No,
Absolutely
yeah.
not.
People literally were like, "Hey, can I give you a hug when I see you?" And I was like, "Yes, that's fine."
Yes. A quiet space, a warm drink. Did you
Yeah.
hear about the plane? Oh my gosh, I'm gonna butcher this. I hate when things come into my brain and I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I do. Like I can see
Yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah. You like have it, but you don't all fully have it.
Well, there was a plane load of people who got stranded in this like town, and it was because they couldn't take off till the next day or something. The
Uh-huh.
town took in the people. They took in all the people like for the night, and then the people got on the plane and took off, and they made like little friendships and cooked for them and everything. It was
I
adorable. I will find
love
it and post it because it's just beautiful.
that. I love that.
Normalizing all of the reactions. So what that means is however people respond is how they respond. If they're mad and they want to just go ham on the fire officials, like, okay, as long as they're not like, gonna hurt somebody, let
Harming
them be
them.
mad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let them be mad. Sad, afraid.
Especially,
Don't tell someone who's scared to not be afraid. That's the worst thing ever.
yeah.
Don't say calm down either. That's so
Yeah.
irritating.
Or like, hey, it's gonna be okay. I know it's gonna be okay.
Not gonna be okay.
It's not okay right now, though.
We're
Don't
not
tell
okay right now.
me
It's not gonna be okay right now.
that.
It's not gonna be okay for a while.
No, so don't tell me it's going to be okay.
Yeah, no, it's
And
highly.
here's the thing, going back to what you said, like letting people be mad. Y'all, if you are dealing, if you are friends or you either went through this or you have friends who went through this horrific fire in LA,
Yeah.
whether someone's house was burned down or not, if it was in the area, don't tell them what to feel because at the end of the day, their world just got turned upside down. Even if it's smoke damage, that's awful.
Oh, it's terrible.
Smoke damage, you have to get rid of still almost everything if it's smoke damage.
We know people that happened to. It was a big mess.
Yes, and so y'all, if you tell people, hey, don't be sad, it's going to be okay, don't be angry, their world just got turned upside down. Don't tell them how to feel.
No, don't tell them how to feel.
Okay, sorry, continue.
Providing information that's reliable. Don't
Yep.
just throw phone numbers around, like try to find consistent, reliable information.
Yep.
With that, avoiding misinformation. Don't pass along rumors. I think people removed from it have a hard time knowing how to be helpful. And so sometimes they just want to keep talking and keep talking.
Mm-hmm.
But as they're sharing these rumors, it's increasing the anxiety. It's certainly not calming things down. And so you don't want to get into the misinformation train, and you certainly don't want to participate in that.
No.
Now, if you're a helper, if what should the helpers do? If you have a friend in LA that you're trying to support,
Yeah.
what do you need to do for yourself too?
Yeah. Well, I need to also make sure that I'm engaging in self-care and
Hmm.
recognizing my own stress and maybe anxiety,
That's right.
right? Me personally, if I'm helping someone who just survived and went through and survived a natural disaster, I have to check in with myself too, as someone who's also been through a natural disaster,
Yeah.
right? I don't know
I
if they're
needed my own therapy session. You almost drowned in a river, and I was not okay either.
so I think it's just, you're right. You and I were both
I
a
was a
mess.
freaking wreck.
But I think, yeah, it's important for you to check in with yourself, especially those of you guys who are big helpers, because it's so easy for us to jump into action and then we get to the end of it and we don't feel really okay.
Hmm.
Um, so it's really important to check in with yourself and check in with your own support system, get your own therapy, all that kind of stuff.
Gare's gonna laugh about this one, but don't doom scroll, which is pot kettle. But here's the thing.
Same.
It's not helpful in a crisis of this magnitude to
Because
doom scroll.
you're gonna see a bunch of I have an example.
Yes.
You're gonna see a bunch of crap. So I wasn't doom scrolling, but I popped on social media just to check our ratings.
Yeah.
And it automatically goes to my personal before I can go to Forensic Friday. So I was on my personal one for a second and someone had posted, I didn't even read it because I was like, this is just gonna piss me off. But they posted a cross and it said this like withstood the fire.
Yeah.
It was like a Christian cross that was like standing on some hill.
Oh, yeah.
And the person who posted was like, this is disgusting. I didn't even read the whole post. But
Mm.
the reason why I'm sitting here talking about that is because if you doom scroll, you're going to come across stuff like that
Yeah.
where, let's be real, someone put that cross up
Oh, yeah.
after the fire happened and then posted it and said this was still standing after the fire happened.
Yes.
I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy. I love Jesus, whatever.
Yeah.
But a wood cross in the middle of a fire is not going to withstand fire. I'm sorry. Physics, I think.
This is so magical. Of all the things we could talk about, they put that cross there.
They put the cross there.
Put it there, and they made the whole thing up.
That's what happens when you doom scroll is you read like you were saying.
No, I know. I'm with you.
Rumors. You read rumors, you read a bunch of nonsense that's not necessarily true, or maybe there's some truth with a spin, and it's like a whole thing, y'all.
It's not helpful.
It's not helpful, but I had to share that example because I was like, that is a wood ass cross
Somebody just did that.
in the literal middle of the fire, like debris.
No, the sentiment is beautiful. Just give the sentiment, but let's not. Also,
Yes.
can we? Now this is taking a turn for
I'm
the
sorry.
for the left. But I just have to say, like,
I was gonna say that example at some point because I just found it insane.
well, and as a Christian, respectfully, don't be an asshole. Don't tell
No.
people, I'm praying for you. God is on the throne. or whatever. Just insert whatever theological nonsense. Just don't do that at all. Just be helpful. Just be helpful or do nothing. Doing
Mhm.
nothing is better than doing the wrong thing.
I will never forget. I'm going to talk about this in my closure in our closure mini that I just told you that I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I will never forget, and I'll share more of the story in that one when someone said, "We're praying for you." And I was like, you can shove that prayer up where it will never be seen again.
Like,
Do
listen,
not say that to me in this circumstance, and I will share that story later. But
so we can pray for people without telling them we're praying for them. Sometimes that's comforting, sometimes it's
yes.
not.
Or you can say, "Hey, you know what? I am praying for you. I am here for you.
Yes,
You let me know what you need." Like, you don't just say
absolutely.
that as a blanket and then be like, hands off. Sorry. That's not
Uh,
how,
yeah,
that's not supportive.
there is a concept called secondary PTSD or compassion fatigue. So,
Yes.
as you're doom scrolling, even if you are not talking to someone in the fire area, you can give yourself trauma
Hmm.
by just exposing yourself to stuff you don't need to expose yourself to. Like during COVID, election stress, all that stuff, there were some clients I had to say, turn off the TV, shut
Hmm.
your phone off, like knock it off. And I had to do that with myself too sometimes. We have to actually insulate ourselves at the same time, especially if you're walking closely with somebody, or in my case, having lived through my parents being very close to a huge wildfire,
Yeah.
and also living in the woods. I've had to be kind of careful about
Oh,
the
yeah.
images that I see because I won't sleep because I'll be worried.
Yeah, you don't want to have that anxiety
No,
of
and
the
my
images.
anxiety has been kicking up my whole family because this is kind of close to home. So we have to protect ourselves in that way too. And if you do find yourself like I really was very upset when Natalie had her thing, and that is not her problem. I did
Mm-mm.
have to pay attention and take good care of myself for a couple weeks too, and then we're fine. Everybody's
We're
fine.
good. Yeah.
But I did
Well,
have to
and
pay
the
attention to
nice
that.
thing is you didn't put that on me.
No. And you
I've
know what's
never felt
mm-mm.
like I had to turn around and take care of you.
No, I would never
If
do that to you.
y'all, if we're showing up for our people in this
Yep.
and they are now shutting their tears off because they and comforting you for yours,
Oh yeah.
we've taken it too far.
We've made it about ourselves in
Yeah.
that moment.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yep.
Nope. That's a good point, Nat. I didn't even think about that. One of the things to talk about is just to be culturally sensitive
Hmm.
in how we're providing aid. So if you're a therapist, I'm especially talking to you, or you're responding in a disaster area, like,
Hmm.
you know, take a look around, get a feel for how people are responding, and we want to be sensitive to what's happening around us and not try to just impose something. We have the best play therapists in the state that we work with, in my humble opinion.
Oh, I agree.
Um, but how you work with children, how you encourage children is a lot the same.
Yeah.
But if you have children, because Nat and I typically work with adults, insulate them as much as you can from the conversation. If you're freaking out, I saw a clip of somebody, and I'm not going to say who because it was a famous person who's going through a hard time, so I'm not going to be critical. But they were talking to someone, and it was being recorded, and they
Hmm.
were holding their kiddo.
Mm.
But the things they were saying were so scary. And I mean, this person's just traumatized. This was not. But if we can come alongside someone and distract the kids, go color with
Yeah.
them, give them an outlet to let the adults have the adult conversations, that's great.
Huge.
That's a huge way that you can help, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
I think as a therapist, one of the ethical considerations is don't roll up there like it's a commercial for your business. Like, don't hand out your cards. I know people who've done that.
No.
Oh, it's like insane. I know
You should
people
see
who've done
my
that.
face, y'all.
I know her face.
Like, what crazy people do that?
Again, don't be an asshole.
Oh
But no,
my
you don't
gosh.
show up and act like you are the therapist on the scene. Just be helpful. Open a pack of water bottles, whatever, if you're going to help.
Yeah.
Also, don't go if you're not invited.
Yeah.
You have no business being there unless you're invited.
No.
Give your money, give the things that you can give that makes things helpful, and know that those things are going to be received by the
Yeah.
right people at the right time in the right places. And it doesn't always have to be you.
And here's the thing. You're allowed to ask people, hey, do you need anything? You're
Hmm.
allowed to ask, but they're allowed to say no.
Yeah, and if their eyes glaze over when you ask, shut the hell up. They don't want to talk to you.
I don't want to talk
What they
about it.
need is a minute.
Yes.
Put a respectful, consensual hand on the shoulder if invited, or a
Yes.
hug, or you know what? Give them a cup of tea,
Yeah.
bring them an extra blanket, or just sit next to
Sometimes,
them and say nothing.
yeah, sometimes they just need to sit there.
Yes,
I mean, you came over to see me after the flood,
I did.
and I barely said a word.
I know. I just need to look at your face.
I had a couple friends. I had a couple friends that week who came over, and this was when I was still like experiencing that crazy head
Mm-hmm.
stuff and sinus stuff because I ingested like
Oh,
mud
yeah.
water. And they told me, they were like, once we got there, one of them is a therapist.
Oh, yeah.
She's like, once I got there, I just knew like I can't ask you a ton of questions because
Mm.
you were not you. And I was like, no, I like couldn't. I was one, like processing still what happened, and two, like my head was pounding. Y'all,
Oh,
sometimes
buddy.
there's physical things going on in their body.
Oh,
Like if they have, if they inhaled a bunch of smoke or
oh.
whatever, like just give them a minute.
Well, what Nat and I did, well, what I did, I knew that I was going to have to harness my ADHD and I was going to need to just be cool. And so I ordered food. We DoorDash food.
We DoorDash
I
pizza. That was
stared at
great.
you. You checked out and we let Preston talk for a couple hours. It was perfect.
Oh yeah, because Preston, he loves to talk.
He's great. He's so entertaining. I talked to him a little bit, mostly just stared at you
I
and
know, and
breathed the same air.
I
Yeah,
just sat there and ate my pizza.
it was beautiful. It was really beautiful. I got in the car and I called my mom and I was like, she's back, kind of. Like
Yeah,
she's alive and I
you
saw
saw me like
you.
when I was coming because I think you came
You were
over on
coming
the
up.
weekend.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
was
didn't
coming.
bomb in on you because it's the last thing I would want.
Oh yeah, well, yeah. I was
Really.
not me. I slept most of the time.
No, and one thing that Nat did, you guys, that's really interesting is there's still a picture she won't show me. She's shown other people, but she won't show me. And it's
Hmm.
when she got plucked out of the river. And
Hmm.
I think that it's probably pretty scary. I don't think I want to see it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's not super. It wasn't right after I got plucked out. It was I had gotten pulled out. I just look horrible. But I had sat there for a minute. My color came back. They didn't take a picture. I don't think anyone took a picture of me right when they pulled me out because they thought I was dead
Yeah.
right when they pulled me out. So I think their main thing, but yeah, there's a picture of me that's just, I just look atrocious.
No, bunny.
It's
Well,
okay.
I don't care. There's air in your lungs. That's all I care about.
And,
So, anyway, the importance of psychological first aid is largely to protect you and maybe reduce the likelihood that you'll get post traumatic stress disorder or acute stress disorder.
mhm.
It's trauma affects everybody differently. So, you can have 25 people be in the same traumatic incident. And you may have a couple people who get PTSD, a couple people who have acute distress and they get over it.
Yep.
And some people, it's a blip on the radar and it has nothing to do with our strength, our
Yep.
resilience. It's just about our brain and how our brain interprets what happened.
Oh yeah.
So we just need to leave room for all different reactions
Yeah.
and just take good care of each other.
And y'all don't be judgy.
Don't be judgy. Let people live. Just let people live.
Yes, don't be judgy. That was one thing. I remember you and I talked about this when I got out of my flood
Oh, yeah.
experience. There was like this part of me and I was wrestling. Do you
Mhm.
remember this? I
I
was
do.
wrestling with like I was like, all these people are like, "Oh my gosh, like you're such a badass." And I'm like, "I didn't hike out." Like my
Um,
sister-in-law and Preston both hiked out.
I know.
I didn't have a dislocated knee like David, but I could not have done it. Like we had 2.5 miles to hike still out.
Mm-mm.
And with what my body had gone through, I was like, I just remember I was like, there's a part of this that we're gonna have to swim because the water level had risen.
Oh, yeah. And you were like, nope.
Yeah, but I just remember I really wrestled with, is it because I'm weak? Is it because I'm a pansy? I didn't do the same thing that they did. And y'all, like, give people space,
Mhm.
affirm their experience because you don't know.
Hmm.
You don't know. Right. And
Right.
now I finally get to this. I'm at this place where I'm like, if anyone wants to tell me that I'm a wimp, you can F right off. Like, whatever.
100%.
But I really wrestled with that. And you know that. Like I told a couple of my friends that about that, and they were
Oh
like,
yeah.
the fact that you feel that way, like, just makes me sad,
I know.
because that's not something you should feel. So y'all, if you didn't experience it, if you weren't in the fire, but you have people who were or who experienced something super scary like that,
Mm,
just be a friend. Like, don't say, oh, well, but what about this? Or you didn't need to do that.
mm,
Or whatever. Like,
mm.
do not minimize someone's experience. And if you
No.
are someone who's been in an experience, and let's say your home didn't burn down, but you have smoke damage. It doesn't matter. Your
Yeah.
experience is your experience, and it's terrible and it's terrifying all the same.
Oh, there was a man I saw on the news who was crying because his whole street, his house was the only one that survived.
Oh my
And
gosh.
he was crying and he goes, I don't know how to feel. I don't
No.
know how to feel. And he was just devastated for his neighbors. And I think that when we go through these things, we talk about self-compassion
Yes.
and we have to be able to just sit with however this is affecting ourselves and other people. And doing that increases our resilience, which
Mhm.
helps us navigate it better and hopefully reduce the impact later on down the road.
And you guys, that man that's crazy. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I saw it. It
That
was really
man,
sweet.
that man whose house survived it, if you will,
Right.
he was just as scared.
Oh, just as
He
scared.
was just as scared to lose all his stuff, everything he's worked for,
Mhm.
and so don't say, well, it's like the, good old Brene Brown sympathy versus empathy. Well,
Yes.
at least your house didn't burn. Like, don't say stuff like that.
Yeah, don't silver lining it. Just let people be. Leave them alone.
Yes.
Or if you're going to enter their space, go in it with kindness, curiosity, and
Yes.
patience.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I really hope that you're staying safe with you and yours in California. We really are actually praying for you and we love you.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we will try to do some research on places that are giving the money away that where they say they're giving the money.
Yes.
Because there's a few that I'm going to donate to that
Yeah.
I think are pretty legit. So we'll post some. We can't say for certain, allegedly, these are good
Allegedly. Oh my
places to
gosh.
send your money. But
Yes. And if any of you guys have places that are legitimate, not
yes,
directly to some human's bank account,
yes,
send them our way and we'll post those too.
absolutely.
So,
Thanks. And we'll see you next week. As always,
bye, forensic friends.
I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening and join us next week for more crime, psychology, and heart.